When a father tries to take the lives of his 8 children, you know that there is a serious problem. There's a serious disconnect from morality into insanity. And that's exactly what happened in Shreveport, Louisiana over the past weekend. As you know, I am from Louisiana, and I received this breaking news story a lot sooner than most because I catch the local news in Louisiana, and I do a good job with watching the news, broadcast and breaking news that comes out because I do have a crime and prison channel, and covering crime and prison is what I do. And so I'm always looking for the latest news to come out. As y'all know, The Pen and the Shank is the most unusual and unique crime and prison channel experience on YouTube. So I'm usually looking for unusual and unique crimes. To say that this is unusual and unique is an understatement. This is more like barbaric and demonic. And when it first came out, I wanted to grab my iPhone, come sit in my awesome chair, and give you the breaking news. But there was a pause in me from doing so. And something in me said, Greg, hurry up, catch this story and bring it to the people before the major news networks get a hold of it and before the heavy hitting YouTubers get a hold of it. You can cover this story before anybody else. You got a head start because you're in Louisiana. You're getting information before most people. Go with it. And all day Sunday, I sat on it and I didn't do nothing. And all day Monday, I didn't do nothing. But instantly, right when it happened, that night, as it was occurring, as it was happening, I saw it and I was ready to go for it. But I'm telling y'all, there was something in me that stirred in me and said, you know what? Why am I going to run to grab my iPhone and hit record when this is so fresh? And I know what just happened because there was enough information to tell me that 8 children had been shot. And that wasn't counting the other 2 people who got shot, including the suspect. And I thought to myself, I don't want to be the type of person who grabs my iPhone and starts recording just for views because I want to get ahead of everybody else on something that's so tragic. There's something in my heart and in my soul, that moral compass that I talked to y'all about, that said, you know what? If I miss out on covering this story before everybody else, so be it. But the decency that resides in my heart and in my mind knew that I couldn't try to take advantage of such a tragic story for the purpose of getting views and getting subscribers. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. No matter what it might have been worth, my moral compass would not allow me to do it. And a lot of people will argue me down and say, you don't need no moral compass. What is all this moral compass stuff? For me, it matters. I have a moral compass that guides me in life, and I do my best. I'm not perfect, but I do my best to be sensitive to other people's struggles, other people's, tragedy. And this was tragic across the board. And I just did not want to jump ahead of it and drop it on YouTube. But I've recently had some viewers reach out and ask if I was going to cover this. And as a crime and prison channel, specifically coming from the state of Louisiana, I think now is a good time to talk about it. And I'm going to read an article from the New York Times because when I read my articles, I usually pull one of the first ones up. I might scan through them real quick to see if it's something I want to read so we can talk about. Just enough of the facts and enough of the, information for me to give to start basing my opinion on, because that's what this is. This is a forum where we discuss our opinion. And that's what I'm going to share about the Shreveport monster who took the life of 8 children, 7 of which were was his own. And this is the story, and we're going to read it, and I'm going to react to it, and take a moment to share in the comments. When you hear that a father took the life of 8 children, 7 of which were his own, when you hear this this information? Are you desensitized to it? Do you think to yourself, not a big deal. So much crazy stuff happens. You're not moved by it. Listen, desensitization is real. And if you've reached that point, then you've reached that point, unfortunately. But some of us have reached that point. And it's okay to admit it. I think to admit it helps you tap into your sensitivity. For me, I'm not surprised when I hear these stories, because every single day I hear stories that are just so tragic in nature that the more you hear them, the more you become desensitized and emotionless about them. But for me, when I hear that and when I heard that, my heart hurt inside. There's 8 children who will not live to play in a playground. They will not live to laugh and make memories with their friends. They won't be able to grow up to build a life of their own. And who knows the impact that they could have had on society. And now we, society, miss out on the possibility that these 8 children could have had an impact in society in general. And maybe it's not a big impact. Maybe it was just to the people who they were supposed to marry someday, or the children that they were supposed to have. You see, that whole timeline is now erased. It's gone, taken by their very father. So I have sensitivity toward this. And sometimes, y'all, when I see these cases, I can't read them. I have to scroll past them. And sometimes when I'm sitting with my wife and she sees this, she'll tear up and she'll shed a tear and cry with the hurt that she feels inside when some of this stuff happens. I don't know, man. You know, it's one thing when I'm covering a case where some lunatic drunk person is stealing a motorized cart and eating cheese in the grocery store for free. And we could laugh and joke about that. But when 8 children are blasted while they're sleeping, execution style, things just don't seem so funny anymore. Haunted by dark thoughts, Louisiana father unalives 8 children. 7 of the 8 children unalived were the shooter's own. Relatives said the gunman, who died in a confrontation with the police, was struggling with mental health problems and stressed about his relationship with his wife. To say that this dude had mental health problems, I believe, is an actual understatement. And as we read this article a little further and delve deeper into the thoughts of this man and exactly what happened, we're going to see, in my opinion, something much more profound than mental health. We're going to go into this and we're going to see that there's something beside mental health that takes place in a person that brings them to do savage acts like this. 8 children were unalived and 2 other people were gravely wounded in a shooting spree that spanned at least 3 locations in Shreveport, Louisiana, and ended with the gunman shot dead after a police chase on Sunday morning, the authorities said. The gunman, Shamar Elkins, I'm going to put his picture right here, and who's 31 years old. And I know we don't want to look at this picture. We don't want to give these people a platform or notoriety, but I want you to take a moment, and I'm going to just put his face right in front of my own, and you'll just hear my thoughts. Stare at his face, because you're looking at the face of evil, in my opinion. You're looking at a man whose demons came out and expressed themselves in a very demonic way. He had mental health problems and had recently expressed unaliving himself. He had those thoughts. Family members said in interviews. The children range in age from 3 to 11, officials said, and 7 of the 8 were Mr. Elkins' own children. He shot them execution style, according to a spokesman for the Shreveport Police Department. They aged from age 3 to age 11, 3 years old. I just did a video yesterday of a savage man who unalived a 7-year-old girl. You know the FedEx driver. And now I'm doing this story on a man who took the life of a 3-year-old execution style. And this is important. This part right here, if you don't pay attention to anything else in this video, please listen to this part. Please. And take a moment to grieve what I'm about to read to you. The children were identified by the Caddo Parish Coroner's Office as Jayla Elkins, age 3. Rest in peace, sweet Jayla. Shayla Elkins, age 5. Rest in peace, Shayla. Kayla Paul, age 6. Rest in peace, Kayla. Layla Paul, age 7. Rest in peace, Layla. Marcaden Paul, age 10. Rest in peace, Marcaden. Shariah Snow, age 11. Rest in peace, Shariah. And Kadarian Snow, age 6. Rest in peace, Kadarian. And Braylon Snow, age 5. Rest in peace, sweet Braylon. I'm sorry this happened. I'm sorry this happened to y'all. This is the words I want to tell them. I don't know if they can hear my words, but I believe in my heart that they rest in heaven. They rest in peace. These innocent kids, all 8 of them, though they lost their lives here on earth and suffered tragedy, I believe and I know that the rest of eternity will be peaceful because they will be with the Lord. Mr. Elkins also shot 2 other people, including his wife, who was hospitalized with life-threatening injuries on Sunday, officials and relatives have said. After the shooting, the authorities said Mr. Elkins took a car by force and police officers pursued him. The officers opened fire and Mr. Elkins died. Corporal Chris Bordelon of the Shreveport Police Department said in a news conference, "It is unclear if officers unalived Mr. Elkins or he died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound." I guess we'll find more about that, as they update it. Mayor Tom Arsenault of Shreveport described the killings in a news conference as maybe the worst tragic situation we've ever had. He's talking about in Shreveport. On Sunday afternoon, friends and relatives of Mr. Elkins said they were processing the devastating toll of the killings. Make no mistake, the shooting is over. Burials are going to take place. People are going to release balloons. People are going to hug one another. With a high-profile case like this, a lot of the general public is likely going to show up and show out to the funeral of these children. You'll probably have a lot of different pastors and preachers speaking. But when all that is over with, when all that's done and life gets back on with usual, there's still going to be people who are processing this and have to grieve. Family members have to grieve. One of the children that he shot was not his own. It was his nephew or niece. And the father of that child said it was his own. I think it was his daughter. That was my only daughter. That father is going to have to process probably the next few years or more, trying to heal from this emotional wound that this man caused him. The police have not offered a possible motive, and their investigation is ongoing. In interviews, relatives described Mr. Elkins as someone who was recently struggling with his mental health and who was stressed about his relationship with his wife, Shaniqua Paul, and I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. I didn't go watch it again. It's Pugh, Paul. Earlier this month on Easter Sunday, he called his mother, Mahalia Elkins, and his stepfather, Marcus Jackson. Mrs. Elkins and Mr. Jackson said in an interview that their son sounded despondent. They said they could hear his children playing in the background during the phone call. Probably the last time that they heard the voices of their grandchildren. Mr. Elkins told them through tears that he wanted to take his own life. He told Mr. Jackson, who's his stepfather, that his wife wanted a divorce and that he was drowning in dark thoughts. Before we start judging his mother and his stepfather because they thought he was and mentioned that he was drowning in dark thoughts, have we not all talked to a family or friend who, when we were talking to them, they were in a very low place in their life, and they might not have said they had dark thoughts, but they said stuff very similar to that equal dark thoughts, or maybe things worse than saying I have dark thoughts, and we were like, nah, you're gonna make it through this. You got this. And you hugged them and you prayed for them and you called to check up on them and you helped them, reroute their thoughts. I told him, you can beat stuff, man. I don't care what you're going through. You can beat it, Mr. Jackson, his stepfather, said. Then I remember him telling me some people don't come back from their demons. How much of a portentous statement is that to come from Mr. Elkins, the father who took the life of his children? I want to repeat that because that's the part of this whole thing that I want to focus on personally. Some people don't come back from their demons. I was talking about the mental health issues that he mentioned and that was mentioned about him having, but I think it was darker and deeper than mental health itself. I think it is correct when he said some people don't come back for their demons. I believe demons is ultimately what took over Mr. Elkins and, enticed him, his weakened mind and his selfish and evil, mindset to push him over the edge, right? He was already struggling, and those demons that came over him sent him over the edge with his own struggles to make him pull this most demonic act. Mr. Elkins hung up, promising to tell his children, dressed in their Sunday best, they were going to church, that their grandparents in Oklahoma City said hello. Mrs. Elkins said she did not know exactly what problems her son was having with his wife. Records show that they were married in 2024. So he only married a few years. She added that her son worked at UPS and had served in the Army. The Army said in a statement on Sunday that Mr. Elkins served in the Louisiana Army National Guard from August 2013 to August 2020 as a signal support system specialist and a fire support specialist. He had no deployment and left the Army as a private. Mrs. Elkins said she was not entirely close with her son. You see that often in these cases where I do a lot of crime in prison. I read a lot of crime in prison. I don't just watch the news, y'all. I do a lot of reading, always have. And when I read something that I've noticed, and this is all recollected in my mind, that a lot of these killers end up having no contact throughout their earlier years with their mother and father, or vice versa, or there was some terrible thing where they were hurt and harmed, whether physically or emotionally, from their mother or father, or they were adopted. You see that often in these cases, and it's not surprising to hear that. She had Mr. Elkins when she was a teenager, and she was struggling with a crack cocaine addiction. So she left him to be raised by a family friend, Betty Walker. Mrs. Elkins reconnected with her son more than a decade later. It wasn't his grandmother that took him in to raise him, but it was Mrs. Betty Walker. And looking at this situation, we could begin to ask, well, who was Miss Betty Walker? And, what kind of upbringing did Mr. Elkins have, with Mrs. Betty Walker? And how was the dynamics of that relationship? Was she more like a mother figure, or was she just a person who raised him? These are questions you start asking when something like this happens. Mrs. Walker, who spoke to authorities on Sunday, did not witness the shooting, said in an interview that Mr. Elkins shot his wife several times, including in the head and in the stomach. Mrs. Walker said she last saw Mr. Elkins last weekend when his family came over for dinner. Nothing appeared off with him at the time, she said. I was getting up this morning to make myself some coffee, and I got the call. She said, my babies are gone. Records show that Mr. Elkins had at least 2 prior convictions, including for driving while intoxicated in 2016 and for illegal use of weapons in 2019. I think when you look at the intoxication or the DUI in itself in 2016, it doesn't necessarily stand out as something that's alarming or any, bells go off in your mind. But when you add a driving while intoxicated in 2016 with some of the statements that we read that he said, with the fact that in 2019, he was also arrested for illegal use of weapons, you begin to see a picture. Something begins to unfold where you say, hey, something's off, something's wrong here. And you can't ignore the notices. You can't ignore the bells when they go off. Sometimes when your conscience tells you something's wrong, it usually is wrong. And that's the time to start paying attention. And that's the time to start taking action to prevent things like this, in my opinion. Are we always going to catch these instances? No, but we can start training ourselves to do a better job to pay attention to what's going on around us. In a police description on the March 2019 incident, an officer wrote that Mr. Elkins pulled a 9mm handgun out of his waistband and bloom at a vehicle 5 times after the driver of the car had pulled a silver handgun on him. One of the bullets Mr. Elkins shot was found near a school where children were playing outside. Obviously, this dude is a bit unhinged in 2019. Something's off. When you start blasting carelessly behind road rage and not paying attention to your surroundings, something is off mentally. You are a problem when you start doing that as a grown person in society and not considering the ramifications of what can happen if you carelessly doing this. Now, if the other guy would have started opening fire on him and he opened fire back in self-defense, that can happen. But because he couldn't control himself, he unleashed 5 rounds and was arrested for it, placed on probation. Keep that in mind, because that's not in this article. That's something else I found out. Willie Vasher, who used to work at UPS with Mr. Elkins, said in an interview that his children were friends with the Elkins children when they lived in Shreveport in 2024. Mr. Elkins appeared like a typical devoted father, Mr. Vashner said. The only thing that stuck out to him about Mr. Elkins was that he often appeared stressed. He had a bald spot on his head because he had a tendency to nervously pull at his hair throughout the day, Mr. Vashner said. Mrs. Elkins said she also noticed that tick. I've seen that from people, man, in prison. When somebody got those bad nerves, I remember a guy, he used to drink coffee and smoke cigarettes, and he literally had coffee and cigarettes in his hand at all time, and he was constantly shaking. Sometimes that cigarette would be like this, some ashes would be dropping all over him, that coffee would be pouring on his shirt. You know what I mean? And the only other thing he did besides smoke and drink coffee, and his nerves were bad, was he'd be rubbing his head. And all of it was bald. Just where he was he wasn't balding like some men just due to genetics. He was balding because his nerves, and he just kept rubbing and pulling at his hair. So I've seen this before. All day I've been asking what happened, Mrs. Vashner said. Mr. Vashner said, who was his friend. In recent weeks, Mr. Elkins' mother and stepfather had felt uneasy about their son. That's something, they felt uneasy about him. But you can never, as uneasy as you feel about somebody, often when people say this happened, they're like, I never would have thought he would do this. I never would have thought he would do that until he does this or does that. And then it all comes to light and you start connecting this stuff. Even as he appeared to signal some hope, he shared a prayer on Facebook this month that began, Dear God, and this is coming from the father, Dear God, Mr. Elkins, Dear God, the killer. Dear God, today I ask you to help me guard my mind and my emotion. So to me, you see something happening in his emotions where he's actually crying out or he's typing out something on Facebook and he's putting it out there in a public forum for others to see. So people are seeing this, but nobody's really knowing what's going on because as he's typing this, he's also fighting demons and we don't realize it. But obviously he's giving in to those demons. And maybe this was his last plea or his last cry, or maybe this was all just, smoke and mirrors. He sent them a photo of his family. His mother texted him last Tuesday to ask how they were, and he replied, everything's going okay. There's a facade going on. There's something fake happening, and that happens often. You ever see when you ask somebody, how's everything going? And they say, oh, it's going great. But inside you're like, yeah, something's off. Something's wrong. They might be telling you with their mouth that something's all good, everything's okay. But their body language tells you that something ain't right. And I think there were some signs here that the people who were around Mr. Elkins could have noticed. But the question is, what could they have done? Because even if they would have spoke out, would society have listened? Would law enforcement have listened? And before we vilify law enforcement has a hard job. Because whether they do or don't, they're vilified. If they make the wrong decision, either way, they're vilified. This is hard. On Thursday, Mrs. Elkins texted, I love y'all. Give my grandson and my granddaughters a kiss from grandma. Thanks so much. He never replied. On Sunday, Mr. Jackson got the first hint that something was wrong. This is his stepfather. When strangers started commenting on his Facebook post to say Mr. Elkins was the devil. We go from saying, I'm going to lose to these demons. Now people are saying that he's the devil as this is happening. And they don't have the information that I have. This is all coming out over the last few days. But people are like, because to commit the atrocity that he committed, to execute his own children while they slept, obviously proves that this is something that the devil would do. Mrs. Elkins took out her phone and read a headline that 8 children, including her grandchildren, were deceased. Why, God, she said, why? And I sympathize with the grandmother. She had her child, Mr. Elkins, the father, the murderer, the now deceased killer, when she was a child. And she thought that Mrs. Walker, the friend of the family, would raise him right. And I believe Mrs. Walker probably did all that she could do. And when the mother reconnected with her son a decade ago, he was already a man. He had already been through the army. He already had children. She had grandchildren. She connects. She builds a relationship. He finds out he has a stepfather, a good man on all accounts. And then they wake up one day and it's all gone, wiped out in a flash. The hopes and dreams that they had for those children are snuffed out like the wind. And now, what they're going to be left with, beside the memories, is a funeral in tombstones. And I believe that these children will be buried because I believe the community will rally around them. I don't think this family probably has enough money to bury 8 people. And there's still 2 people in the hospital recovering from being shot in the head. But I believe the community will rally around the children and they'll raise the money for the funeral itself. And I believe that these children will get a burial. And that's what the family will have. And then I'm sympathetic. I try to be, because now the grandmother has to bury not just her grandchildren, but she's going to have to bury her son. The woman who raised this savage is going to have to bury him. So they have to reconcile with themselves that I still have to bury this man. You have a child, you have a son or a daughter, and you know no matter what they do, you still gonna love them. See, sometimes my son and daughter do things that I don't agree with, but it never means I don't love them. Now, they may perceive that to be the case, but that's never the case. I'm usually the one who pops around when things ain't going so great for them. I never really get to be around often when things are all, joyful. But when stuff goes bad, I usually get the phone call. That's when I do get the phone call, and that's when I show up. And even if they'd done the worst case thing, I would still love them. I would still walk them through it. And I was still looking to, at anybody and say, look, I love my children. But that doesn't mean I can accept what they did. I might have to accept the reality of it, but I'll never agree with it. I will never, ever agree with bad behavior. And then we go from bad behavior to pure evil behavior, which is what happened here. Welcome to The Pen and the Shank, the most unusual and unique crime and prison channel experience on YouTube. And if you stuck this far throughout this video, that means you really are someone who supports what I'm doing. And you probably already hit the like and subscribe button. But if you didn't, I'm asking you to hit the like and subscribe button and leave a comment in the comment section to help the algorithm. So as I put more and more of these crime and prison stories and bring you the day-to-day crimes, and sometimes you're going to get the unusual and unique, but sometimes you're just going to get me speaking like this because I don't think that I could add smoke and mirrors to this. I don't think that I can go to CapCut and add any visuals or pictures or anything special. There's nothing to be added because this is tragic all around. Rest in peace, sweet little babies. And I pray that someday when I get to heaven, I'll say, oh, that's them babies. That's them babies. And I get to smile and see them in heaven and know that God got them, and they'll be all right. Until then,